June 19th, 1943. The rolling farmlands outside Carentan, Normandy. Lieutenant Theodore Wilson's hand trembled slightly as he peered through the telescopic sight mounted to his M18 Hellcat tank destroyer, his crosshairs settling on the angular front plate of a German Panther tank. The massive Panther sat motionless at 1,200 yards, 4 times beyond effective range for any American tank weapon. The German commander clearly believed himself untouchable at this distance. Wilson's finger tightened on the trigger of the newly mounted 90mm gun, a weapon that engineering experts at Aberdeen Proving Ground had declared completely unsuitable for mobile platforms just 8 months earlier. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The shell left the barrel at 3,000 feet per second, crossing the distance to target in just over 1 second. When it struck the Panther's frontal armor, it didn't bounce or shatter as smaller shells would have it punched straight through, igniting ammunition and fuel in a catastrophic explosion that lifted the tank's 45-ton turret completely off its ring. 4 more Panthers, witnessing their lead tank's destruction, immediately reversed into the tree line. American tankers across the radio net erupted in celebration. What they had just witnessed was supposed to be impossible. For the first time since landing in Normandy, American armor had struck a knockout blow against German tanks from beyond the range of return fire. This moment represented the culmination of efforts by one stubborn engineer who had refused to accept conventional wisdom about tank destroyer design. His name was Edward Lamb, and his stupid idea to mount a massive 90mm anti-aircraft gun onto the fast, lightly armoured Hellcat platform had just changed the face of armoured warfare into the European theatre. The journey to this breakthrough began 2 years earlier on September 8, 1941, 3 months before Pearl Harbor would thrust America into global war. On that autumn morning at the Army's Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, Captain Edward Lamb arrived to take charge of a deeply troubled weapon development program. The 37-year-old engineer from Cleveland, Ohio, had been transferred from artillery development after his previous project. A new fuse design for howitzer shells had come in under budget and 3 months ahead of schedule. His new assignment represented a far more significant challenge: solving America's impending tank crisis. Intelligence reports from battlefields across Europe revealed a disturbing trend. German Panzer divisions were deploying increasingly powerful tanks with thicker armor and longer-range weapons than anything in the Allied arsenal. The Wehrmacht's Panzer IV, already formidable, was being up-armored with additional plate. Intelligence suggested new models in development with even thicker frontal protection and high-velocity 75mm guns capable of destroying American tanks before they could close to effective firing range. In response, the U.S. Army had established the Tank Destroyer Command in November 1941, a force built around the doctrine of mobile defense against armored threats. The fundamental concept was simple in theory. Rather than engaging enemy tanks with American tanks, specialized vehicles would intercept and destroy German armor using superior mobility and firepower. Army Chief of Staff George Marshall had authorized priority development of vehicles to fulfill this mission. The problem Lamb encountered upon his arrival was that existing designs fell catastrophically short of requirements. The first prototype, designated the M10 Wolverine, mounted a 75mm gun, the same weapon carried by the Army's standard Sherman tank. Testing had proven this weapon wholly inadequate against the frontal armor of current German tanks beyond 500 yards. Against newer models expected to reach the battlefield by 1943, it would be nearly useless except at point-blank range. "We're sending these boys to their deaths," Lamb wrote in his first assessment memorandum. Current weapon systems will force our tank destroyers to close to suicidal distances against superior German armour. This represents an unacceptable tactical disadvantage that will result in catastrophic casualties. His initial recommendation seemed obvious: mount a larger gun capable of defeating enemy armour at extended ranges. But this solution faced multiple technical challenges that senior ordnance officers considered insurmountable. The next larger caliber weapon in America's arsenal was the 90mm anti-aircraft gun, a massive weapon weighing nearly 4 tons in its fixed emplacement. Conventional wisdom held that such a weapon could never be successfully mounted on a mobile platform light enough to fulfill the tank destroyer's mobility requirements. Colonel Harold Matthews, the program director, summarily rejected Lamb's proposal. The recoil forces alone would tear apart any chassis light enough to achieve required road speed, Matthews wrote in his response. Anti-aircraft guns are designed for fixed positions, not mobile warfare. This proposal reflects fundamental misunderstanding of ordnance engineering principles. Lamb refused to accept this assessment. He spent 2 weeks conducting mathematical analyses of recoil forces, turret ring stresses, and suspension loading. His calculations suggested that a properly designed recoil system could disperse the 90mm gun's massive energy without catastrophic damage to a light chassis. On October 1, 1941, he resubmitted his proposal with detailed engineering specifications for a modified recoil mechanism that would reduce peak force transmission by 63%. Matthews rejected the proposal again, this time more forcefully. This office will not waste precious development resources on theoretical exercises while our troops face imminent deployment, he wrote. Stick to practical solutions within established parameters. For most officers, this directive would have ended the matter. The military hierarchy was clear, and disobeying direct orders rarely advanced one's career. But Edward Lamb possessed 2 qualities that would ultimately prove decisive: engineering brilliance and stubborn determination that bordered on insubordination. Rather than abandoning his concept, Lamb began working nights and weekends in an abandoned maintenance shed at the edge of Aberdeen's vehicle yard. With the help of 3 enlisted mechanics who believed in his vision, he salvaged components from decommissioned equipment and began building a prototype recoil system. The team worked through winter 1941 and into spring 1942, using their personal time to develop a concept the Army had officially rejected. By March 1942, they had constructed a functioning recoil mechanism that could theoretically handle the 90mm gun's massive force. The system utilized a combination of hydraulic cylinders and a specialized spring assembly that extended the recoil distance while reducing peak force. Initial static testing suggested the system could reduce maximum transmitted force by 78%, sufficient to protect even a light chassis from structural failure. What Lamb lacked was an actual 90mm gun and a vehicle chassis for mounting it. Both were controlled resources that required official requisition through channels that had already rejected his concept. This roadblock might have stopped a lesser man, but Lamb had developed a reputation for creative problem-solving that occasionally crossed into rule-bending. On April 12, 1942, the Aberdeen testing range conducted evaluation firing of captured German 88mm anti-tank guns, weapons that were devastating Allied armour across North Africa. Lamb attended as an observer. The demonstration confirmed his worst fears. German tanks equipped with similar weapons would be able to destroy American tanks at ranges beyond 1,500 yards, while remaining completely invulnerable to return fire. After the demonstration, Lamb approached Major General Gladion Barnes, the recently appointed Chief of Research and Engineering for Army Ordnance. Rather than going through proper channels, Lamb had prepared a small portfolio containing his calculations, preliminary test results, and photographs of the prototype recoil system. "Sir, I need 5 minutes of your time to prevent thousands of American casualties," Lamb said, handing the folder to the surprised general. This breach of protocol might have ended Lamb's career instantly, but something in his intensity gave the general pause. Barnes leafed through the documents while Lamb provided a concise explanation of his concept. After several minutes of silence, Barnes closed the folder. "Captain, what you're proposing violates every established principle of mobile artillery design," he said. Lamb's heart sank. Then Barnes continued. "But our boys aren't fighting according to established principles. They're fighting Germans who don't care what our textbooks say is impossible." Barnes authorized a limited development program under his direct supervision, bypassing the normal command structure that had blocked Lamb's innovation. Within 48 hours, Lamb had access to a 90mm anti-aircraft gun, a modified M10 chassis, and a small team of engineers and machinists. They were given 90 days to produce a functioning prototype or face cancellation. The work proceeded at a frantic pace through spring 1942. The team encountered multiple setbacks. The first mounting system failed during initial firing tests, nearly tearing the turret from the chassis. The second design resolved structural issues but proved too heavy, reducing vehicle speed below acceptable parameters. By late June, with the deadline approaching, the project appeared to be validating its critics. During this critical period, Lamb made the engineering breakthrough that would ultimately prove decisive. Rather than trying to fully contain the gun's recoil energy, he developed a system that would partially transfer it into forward momentum of the entire vehicle. The concept was counterintuitive, deliberately allowing the massive gun to push the tank destroyer backward several inches with each shot, but it reduced stress on the mounting system by nearly 40%. On July 9, 1942, the prototype designated XM18 conducted its first full-power firing test with General Barnes in attendance. The vehicle successfully fired 5 rounds at a simulated Panzer IV target at 1,200 yards, achieving 4 direct hits that would have penetrated the German tank's frontal armour. The recoil system performed within design parameters, and though the vehicle rocked dramatically with each shot, structural integrity remained intact. Barnes was impressed but remained concerned about the vehicle's light armour protection. "This vehicle can certainly kill at remarkable range," he noted. "But what happens when it faces return fire?" Lamb's response reflected the fundamental philosophy that would define the Hellcats' combat doctrine. "Sir, this vehicle isn't designed to stand and trade punches. It's designed to strike first, strike hard, and move immediately to another position. With this gun, our crews can engage from positions where enemy tanks can't effectively return fire. Speed is its armour." This philosophy directly contradicted established American armoured doctrine, which emphasized balanced protection, firepower, and mobility. The Hellcat would sacrifice nearly all protection to maximize the other 2 elements. It represented a high-risk, high-reward approach that many senior officers considered recklessly dangerous for the crews who would operate these vehicles in combat. Despite these concerns, the prototype's performance was impossible to ignore. The 90mm gun could penetrate the frontal armour of any known German tank at ranges beyond 1,200 yards. No other Allied armoured vehicle could make this claim. In August 1942, Barnes authorized limited production of 50 vehicles for field evaluation, now officially designated the M18 Hellcat. The first production models reached training units in November 1942. Driver instructors immediately recognized the vehicle's extraordinary mobility. With a top road speed of 55 miles per hour, faster than any tank in any army, the Hellcat could rapidly relocate between firing positions. The powerful Wright R975 radial aircraft engine gave it exceptional acceleration, and its torsion bar suspension allowed it to maintain higher off-road speeds than conventional tanks. Gunnery training revealed both strengths and weaknesses in Lamb's design. The 90mm gun demonstrated remarkable accuracy and devastating penetration power. Experienced gunners could reliably hit tank-sized targets at ranges up to 1,500 yards, 3 times the effective range of Sherman tank guns. However, the powerful gun required extensive crew training to manage. The massive recoil, even with Lamb's innovative dampening system, made accurate, rapid fire challenging. The vehicle's light weight meant it rocked dramatically with each shot, requiring gunners to completely reacquire targets between rounds. While training progressed, European battlefields were revealing the urgency of Lamb's innovation. In North Africa, American tank units equipped with M4 Shermans faced increasingly difficult engagements against German Panzer, IVs and the newly deployed Tiger I tanks. The Tiger's 88mm gun could destroy Shermans at ranges beyond 2,000 yards, while Sherman's 75mm guns struggled to penetrate Tiger armor even at close range. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Reports from the front lines painted a grim picture. During battles at Carentan Pass in February 1943, American tankers found themselves in what one battalion commander called a shooting gallery, where we were the targets. Sherman crews were forced to close to suicidal ranges of 300 yards or less to have any hope of penetrating German armor. The results were catastrophic losses that threatened to undermine morale throughout American armored forces. These battlefield realities accelerated the Hellcat deployment schedule. In March 1943, General Eisenhower personally requested that M18 Hellcats be prioritized for shipment to the European theatre. The 1st Combat-Ready Battalion, equipped with 36 vehicles, arrived in England in April 1943, just as Allied forces were completing the North African campaign and preparing for the invasion of Sicily. Lieutenant Colonel James Leach, commanding the 2nd Battalion, 18th Tank Destroyer Group, developed tactical doctrine that would maximize the Hellcat's strengths while minimizing its vulnerabilities. "This is not a brawler," he instructed his company commanders. "This is a sniper. Find positions with good fields of fire, engage beyond the enemy's effective range, and relocate immediately after firing. Never stay stationary for more than 60 seconds after revealing your position." These tactics represented a significant departure from traditional American armor doctrine, which emphasized direct engagement and rapid maneuver. Hellcat units would operate more like mobile artillery, striking from concealed positions at extreme ranges before withdrawing. The concept faced significant skepticism from traditional armor officers, who considered the approach too passive and complex for battlefield conditions. As D-Day approached, Edward Lamb, now promoted to Major, travelled to England to provide technical support for the Hellcat battalions preparing for the Normandy invasion. During a staff meeting at Allied headquarters, he encountered Brigadier General Maurice Rose, commander of the 2nd Armoured Division, who openly criticised the Hellcat concept. "Your vehicle has a magnificent gun," Rose acknowledged, "but it's wrapped in aluminum foil. The first German tank that spots it will turn it into scrap metal." Lamb's response was characteristically direct. "General, with respect, that German tank has to survive being hit first, and it has to see us before we see it. Neither is likely when we can kill it from 1,200 yards." The exchange, highlighted the fundamental tension between traditional armoured warfare doctrine and the new approach Lamb's innovation enabled. For armoured warfare since 1916, the equation had been simple. To kill enemy tanks, you needed your own tanks with sufficient armour to survive return fire. Lamb's concept upended this assumption by emphasising extreme range engagement that made armour protection potentially unnecessary. The Hellcats' combat debut came in the days following the D-Day landings. On June 10, 1943, as American forces pushed inland from the Normandy beaches, the 2nd Battalion encountered German armour for the first time near Carentan. The engagement began poorly. 2 Hellcats were destroyed by German 88mm anti-tank guns before they could deploy effectively. Traditional armour officers pointed to these losses as validation of their concerns. But as Hellcat crews gained experience, they began applying the doctrine they had trained for. Rather than advancing directly against German positions, they utilized the surrounding terrain to find concealed firing positions with clear lines of sight to likely enemy approaches. The Hellcat's low profile, nearly 18 inches shorter than a Sherman tank, made it easier to conceal behind hedgerows and in shallow depressions. On June 19th, near the town of Saint-Lô, Lieutenant Theodore Wilson's Hellcat platoon demonstrated the full potential of Lamb's vision. Having identified likely routes for German armour counterattack, Wilson positioned his 5 vehicles in concealed locations overlooking a broad valley. Each Hellcat was positioned to cover the others, creating interlocking fields of fire while remaining hidden from direct observation. At 0745 hours, German forces launched a counterattack led by a company of Panther tanks, the newest and most formidable German armour, with frontal protection impervious to standard Sherman tank fire. The Panthers advanced confidently across open ground, their commanders apparently unaware that they were under observation from American positions nearly 1,400 yards distant. Wilson allowed the German formation to advance to 1,200 yards before giving the order to fire. 5 90mm guns fired nearly simultaneously. 4 Panthers were hit, 3 catastrophically. German tank commanders, accustomed to immunity from American fire beyond 800 yards, were completely surprised by destruction from an invisible enemy at unprecedented range. The surviving Panthers attempted to locate the American positions, but were hampered by the Hellcats' concealment and the confusion of having lost most of their formation in seconds. Following their doctrine, Wilson's crews fired 2 rounds each, then immediately relocated to secondary positions. By the time German artillery began falling on their initial locations, the Hellcats had already displaced to continue the engagement from new vantage points. The entire battle lasted less than 15 minutes. When it ended, 8 Panther tanks lay destroyed on the valley floor. Not a single Hellcat had been hit. The action represented a complete validation of both Lamb's technical innovation and the tactical doctrine built around it. American forces had effectively neutralized German armor while minimizing their own vulnerability, the core promise of the tank destroyer concept. News of the engagement spread quickly through Allied command. General Omar Bradley, commanding American ground forces in Normandy, requested a detailed after-action report. When technical analysis confirmed that the Hellcats had indeed destroyed Panther tanks at ranges beyond 1,200 yards, Bradley reportedly remarked, "It appears we finally have an answer to German armour superiority." For Edward Lamb, watching from headquarters as reports flowed in, the success was bittersweet. His stupid idea had proven itself in combat, potentially, saving thousands of American lives. Yet he knew that the Hellcat represented only a partial solution to America's armour challenges. While it could destroy German tanks from exceptional ranges, its minimal armour protection meant that crews remained vulnerable if caught in unfavourable conditions. This fundamental tension would define the Hellcat's service through the remainder of the war. In situations where terrain and tactics allowed standoff engagement, the vehicle proved devastatingly effective. In close-quarters combat or urban environments where long-range fields of fire were unavailable, its thin armor became a significant liability. Some units reported losing vehicles to German infantry, armed with simple magnetic mines or Panzerfaust anti-tank weapons that easily penetrated the Hellcat's half-inch armor plate. The vehicle's ultimate combat record reflected this duality. By war's end, Hellcat battalions claimed an extraordinary kill ratio of approximately 18 enemy vehicles, destroyed for each Hellcat lost in combat. No other American armored vehicle achieved comparable results, yet the Hellcat also suffered among the highest casualty rates of any American armored vehicle when engaged in unfavorable conditions. After the breakthrough at Saint-Lô, Hellcat production accelerated. By October 1943, more than 600 vehicles had been delivered to combat units in the European theatre. The unique combination of exceptional mobility and devastating long-range firepower made the Hellcat particularly valuable during the rapid advance across France in late summer 1943. During the rapid advance across France, Hellcats repeatedly demonstrated their unique capabilities. Major Robert Farrell, an armour officer attached to Patton's Third Army staff, documented Hellcat operations during this period. His field report described a remarkable engagement near Metz on August 27, 1943. A platoon of 5 Hellcats encountered an entire battalion of German armour during the American advance toward the Moselle River. Positioned on high ground overlooking a valley, the Hellcats engaged from ranges exceeding 1,400 yards, destroying 7 German tanks before being spotted and forcing the German formation to withdraw. The psychological impact cannot be overstated, Farrell wrote. German commanders had become accustomed to armour superiority. The ability of American forces to destroy their heaviest tanks at unprecedented ranges has created hesitation and caution, where previously there was confidence and aggression. This psychological effect extended beyond tactical engagements to shape German strategic decision-making. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, the German commander in the West, began issuing orders restricting panzer movements during daylight hours in areas where American tank destroyer units were known to operate. Intelligence assessments confirmed that German tank losses too. Long-range fire had compelled tactical adaptations that reduced their offensive effectiveness. By November 1943, Hellcat battalions had been integrated into all major American formations in the European theatre. The vehicles played a particularly crucial role during the German Ardennes offensive in December, the massive counterattack that would become known as the Battle of the Bulge. As German panzer divisions broke through initial American defences, creating widespread chaos and confusion, Hellcat units provided mobile anti-armour capabilities that proved essential in delaying the German advance. Near the critical crossroads town of Bastogne, the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion deployed its Hellcats along likely approaches for German armour. On December 19th, as elements of the 2nd Panzer Division approached through early morning fog, they encountered a screen of Hellcats positioned along elevated terrain. The limited visibility prevented Hellcats from engaging at their maximum effective range, but it also forced German tanks to advance to within 800 yards before identifying American positions. Sergeant Paul Miller commanded a Hellcat positioned behind a stone farmhouse wall. In his after-action report, he described the engagement. "We couldn't see them until they were about 800 yards out, which wasn't ideal for us. But when that fog lifted slightly and we could make out their silhouettes, we had 5 Panthers in front of us, completely exposed. Our first round hit the lead tank in the turret ring. It was brewing up before they even realized they were under fire. Miller's Hellcat destroyed 3 Panthers in under 2 minutes before relocating. The German advance stalled as additional tanks were hit from concealed American positions. Within an hour, the Panzer column had lost 11 vehicles and was forced to redirect its advance away from the most direct route to Bastogne, costing precious hours, during a campaign where time was the most critical factor. Similar engagements occurred throughout the Ardennes as German armoured spearheads encountered Hellcats defending key road junctions. While the Hellcats could not stop the massive German offensive alone, they imposed delays and inflicted losses that contributed significantly to the ultimate failure of the German operation. By forcing German commanders to advance more cautiously and to divert from optimal routes, Hellcat battalions helped buy the time needed for larger American forces to organize a cohesive defense. The most dramatic demonstration of the Hellcat's impact came during the battle for the town of Nouville on December 20th. A small American force, including elements of the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion, held the town against repeated attacks by the 2nd Panzer Division. Lieutenant James Harper commanded 3 Hellcats positioned to cover the northern approaches to the town. His after-action report documented an engagement that would become legendary in American armor history. We identified a column of approximately 15 German tanks advancing along the main road from Borsy, Harper wrote. Rather than engaging immediately, we allowed the lead elements to approach to within 1,000 yards, giving us optimal firing positions against their flanks as they entered the slight depression north of town. Harper's gunners opened fire simultaneously, destroying 4 Panther tanks with their first volley. The remainder of the German column attempted to deploy into combat formation, but found themselves constrained by the narrow valley and surrounding forest. Unable to maneuver effectively, they presented stationary targets to the Hellcat gunners. We engaged systematically, prioritizing command tanks identifiable by their additional antennas, Harper continued. After destroying 8 vehicles, we relocated to secondary positions as German artillery began targeting our initial location. From our new positions, we engaged the remaining German tanks as they attempted to withdraw. By the engagement's end, Harper's 3 Hellcats had destroyed or disabled 11 German tanks without suffering a single loss. The action effectively blunted the 2nd Panzer Division's advance toward Bastogne for critical hours, contributing significantly to the successful defense of the vital crossroads town. General McAuliffe, commanding the American forces at Bastogne, would later credit the Hellcat battalions with providing the armor-killing capability that made our defense possible. The Hellcats' performance during the Battle of the Bulge represented the pinnacle of Edward Lamb's vision. Operating in conditions of limited visibility, against superior numbers, and often without air support, Hellcat units demonstrated the value of extreme range engagement capability combined with tactical mobility. While conventional Sherman tanks struggled to defeat German Panthers and Tigers even at close range, Hellcat crews consistently destroyed the Bundeswehr's heaviest armor at distances that minimized their own vulnerability. Yet the battle also exposed the Hellcat's limitations in stark terms. In conditions where long-range engagement wasn't possible, dense forest, urban environments, or poor visibility, the vehicle's minimal armor protection created extreme vulnerability. During the first 3 days of the German offensive, American forces lost 27 Hellcats in close-quarters engagements where their mobility and range advantages couldn't be utilized effectively. These losses highlighted the fundamental trade-off at the heart of Lamb's design philosophy. By sacrificing protection to maximize firepower and mobility, the Hellcat had created unprecedented tank-killing capability, but at the cost of crew vulnerability in unfavorable conditions. For the men who crewed these vehicles, this trade-off wasn't an abstract engineering calculation. It was a presentive Custavot, a daily reality that shaped their combat experience in deeply personal ways. Staff Sergeant Thomas Westfield, a Hellcat commander with the 823rd Tank Destroyer Battalion, captured this reality in a letter to his wife written in January 1944. "Our vehicle can kill any tank the Germans have, and from distances they can't believe. But if they spot us first, if they get close, we're in serious trouble. There's barely enough steel around us to stop machine gun fire, let alone a tank shell. So we live by a simple rule: see them first, hit them first, and move before they can hit back. When it works, it's beautiful. When it doesn't, well, I've lost too many friends to think about that too much." The Hellcats' unique combination of devastating firepower and extreme vulnerability created a distinctive combat psychology among its crews. Unlike Sherman tank crews, who could rely on at least moderate protection from enemy fire, Hellcat crews operated with the knowledge that almost any hit would be catastrophic. This reality fostered an aggressive reconnaissance culture. Hellcat units typically committed disproportionate resources to forward observation and early target identification, knowing their survival depended on engaging enemy armor before being spotted themselves. As Allied forces pushed into Germany in early 1944, the Hellcat faced its most significant challenge with the widespread deployment of the German King Tiger tank. Weighing nearly 70 tons and protected by armor up to 18 centimeters thick at the front, the King Tiger represented the ultimate expression of German heavy tank philosophy. Its 8.8mm gun could destroy any Allied armoured vehicle at ranges beyond 2,000 yards, while its frontal armour was nearly impervious to most Allied tank and anti-tank weapons. Against this formidable opponent, even the Hellcat's 90mm gun struggled to achieve frontal penetration at combat ranges. Technical analysis, conducted after several engagements, revealed that the Hellcat could reliably penetrate a King Tiger's frontal armour only at ranges under 600 yards, well within the German tank's effective firing range. This reality forced a significant evolution in Hellcat tactics during the final phase of the European campaign. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Davison, commanding the 823rd Tank Destroyer Battalion during operations in the Rhineland, developed new doctrines specifically for engaging King Tigers. Rather than attempting frontal engagement, Hellcat units would conduct elaborate flanking maneuvers, using their superior mobility to attack from directions where the German tank's armor was thinner. These tactics required exceptional coordination between multiple Hellcat platoons and supporting infantry to achieve successful results. On March 12, 1944, near the town of Remagen, Davison's battalion encountered 3 King Tigers supporting a German counterattack against the recently captured Ludendorff Bridge. Rather than engaging directly, Davison deployed his companies in a wide flanking maneuver that required travelling nearly 15 kilometres through difficult terrain. After 4 hours of careful movement, 2 Hellcat companies achieved positions on the German formation's right flank, where the King Tiger's side armour was vulnerable even at extended ranges. The engagement that followed demonstrated the Hellcat at its tactical best. From concealed positions approximately 1,000 yards from the German tanks, 6 Hellcats opened fire simultaneously. All 3 King Tigers were hit in their thinner side armour, with 2 destroyed outright and the 3rd immobilized by track damage. The entire German counterattack collapsed with the loss of their heavy armour support. The Ludendorff Bridge, the only intact Rhine crossing captured by Allied forces, remained in American hands, allowing for the acceleration of the advance into Germany's industrial heartland. This action represented the Hellcats' most significant strategic contribution to the war's final phase. By neutralizing the King Tiger threat to the Remagen bridgehead, Hellcat units had directly enabled the rapid Allied advance that would help bring the European war to its conclusion. General Omar Bradley would later call the defense of the Remagen bridgehead the single most important tactical action on the Western Front, and the Hellcats' role in that defense was instrumental. As Allied forces pushed deeper into Germany in April 1944, Hellcat battalions increasingly faced urban combat conditions where their primary advantages, range and mobility, were severely constrained. In cities like Cologne, Frankfurt, and finally Berlin itself, Hellcat crews found themselves engaging targets at distances measured in tens of meters rather than hundreds or thousands. In these environments, the vehicle's thin armor became a critical vulnerability. To address these challenges, many Hellcat units developed improvised protection measures. Crews welded additional steel plate salvaged from destroyed German vehicles to their hulls. They filled sandbags against turret sides. They developed urban tactics that relied heavily on infantry support to identify and neutralize anti-tank threats before they could engage. These adaptations reflected the Hellcat crew's resourcefulness, but they also highlighted the fundamental limitation of the original design concept when applied outside its intended tactical environment. Edward Lamb, by now promoted to lieutenant colonel, conducted a field assessment tour in April 1944, visiting Hellcat units across the front lines to gather operational feedback. His report to the Ordnance Department acknowledged both the vehicle's remarkable successes and its limitations. The M18 has exceeded all performance expectations when employed according to its design doctrine. No other Allied armoured vehicle has achieved comparable kill ratios against German heavy armour. However, the fundamental compromise at the heart of its design, the sacrifice of protection for firepower and mobility, creates significant vulnerabilities in close-quarters combat. Future designs must seek a more balanced approach. This assessment reflected Lamb's evolution as a designer. The engineer who had once been willing to sacrifice nearly all protection to maximize range and firepower had come to recognize the cost of that trade-off in human terms. The Hellcat's exceptional combat record, approximately 2,800 confirmed German armored vehicle kills by war's end, had validated his technical vision. But the vehicle's losses, particularly in urban combat, where crews had minimal chance of survival when hit, had revealed the limitations of an approach that prioritized pure tank-killing capability above crew protection. As the European War reached its conclusion in May 1944, Hellcat battalions participated in the final battles for Berlin and the German surrender. The vehicle that had entered service less than 2 years earlier had transformed American anti-armor capabilities, giving Allied forces the ability to engage and destroy German heavy tanks at ranges previously considered impossible. More than any other American armored vehicle, the Hellcat had directly countered the qualitative advantage that German tank design had maintained throughout much of the war. The Hellcat's legacy extended beyond the immediate tactical impact to influence post-war American tank destroyer doctrine. The vehicle had demonstrated both the potential and the limitations of specialized anti-armor platforms. Its exceptional kill ratio against German tanks, approximately 18 enemy vehicles destroyed for each Hellcat lost in combat, suggested the validity of the tank destroyer concept. Yet its vulnerability in adverse conditions highlighted the danger of excessive specialization. In the immediate post-war period, the U.S. Army conducted comprehensive analysis of armored warfare lessons from the European theater. The Hellcat featured prominently in these assessments. General Jacob Devers, who had commanded the 6th Army Group during the final phase of the European campaign, offered perhaps the most balanced evaluation. The M18 represented an innovative response to a specific tactical problem: how to defeat superior German armor with the technology available to us in 1942. Its success validated the concept of specialized tank destroyers, while simultaneously revealing why balanced designs remain essential for general combat operations. This nuanced assessment ultimately shaped the evolution of post-war American armor doctrine. Rather than maintaining separate tank and tank destroyer forces, the Army integrated the lessons of both into more balanced vehicle designs. The 90mm gun that had made the Hellcat so lethal became standard armament for the next generation of American main battle tanks, while the emphasis on protection received renewed priority in post-war design philosophy. For Edward Lamb, the Hellcat's war record represented both vindication and caution. His stupid idea to mount an aircraft gun on a mobile platform had revolutionized American anti-armor capabilities at a critical moment in the war. Thousands of American lives had potentially been saved by the ability to engage German heavy tanks from beyond their effective range. Yet the price paid by Hellcat crews when their vehicles' vulnerabilities were exposed had tempered any simple triumph narrative. After the war, Lamb continued his career in military engineering, eventually rising to the rank of colonel before retiring in 1958. His later designs, particularly the experimental T-95 heavy tank, reflected the lessons learned from the Hellcat experience, emphasizing a more balanced approach to the classic armor design triad of firepower, protection, and mobility. The engineer, who had once been willing to sacrifice nearly all protection to maximize killing power, had developed a more nuanced philosophy that placed greater value on crew survival. The Hellcat itself saw limited post-war service. Most were quickly mothballed as the Army transitioned to new tank designs that incorporated the lessons of World War II. A few found their way to Allied nations through military assistance programs, serving in Yugoslavia, Taiwan, and several South American countries into the 1960s. Today, surviving examples can be found in museums and private collections, preserved as reminders of an innovative response to a desperate tactical situation. Perhaps the most meaningful assessment of the Hellcat's impact came not from generals or engineers, but from the men who had crewed these vehicles in combat. Staff Sergeant Michael Korchak, a Hellcat gunner with 823rd Tank Destroyer Battalion, summarized the experience in a 1963 interview for the U.S. Army's Oral History Project. "We knew we were vulnerable hell. We called it the death trap when officers weren't around. But we also knew we could kill any tank the Germans had, from distances that seemed impossible. That knowledge gave us confidence, even knowing our own protection was minimal. We lived by a simple rule: see them first, hit them first, move before they can shoot back. When it worked, which was most of the time, there was nothing better. When it didn't work, well, we lost friends. But that's the nature of war, isn't it? Every advantage comes with a cost." This frank assessment captures the essential truth of the Hellcat story. Edward Lamb's innovation had created unprecedented capability by accepting a calculated vulnerability. The 90mm gun that couldn't possibly work on a mobile platform had proven devastatingly effective, changing the equation of armored warfare on the Western Front. The vehicle's extraordinary mobility, faster than any tank in any army, had allowed it to exploit its firepower advantage while minimizing exposure to return fire. Yet the same design choices that created these advantages had imposed real costs on the men who operated these vehicles in combat. The Hellcat's minimal armor protection meant that mistakes or bad luck were rarely survivable. While conventional tank crews might survive a penetrating hit with injuries, Hellcat crews hit by enemy fire usually perished with their vehicles. This reality created a unique psychological burden that shaped every aspect of how these units operated. In the final analysis, the Hellcat represented something more profound than a successful weapon system. It embodied the American approach to technological problem-solving during the greatest conflict in human history: pragmatic, innovative, and willing to challenge conventional wisdom when circumstances demanded. Edward Lamb's refusal to accept that the 90mm gun couldn't possibly work on a mobile platform had given American forces a capability that senior officers had deemed impossible. This willingness to pursue seemingly stupid ideas when conventional approaches proved inadequate became one of America's greatest strengths during World War II. From the development of proximity fuses for artillery shells to the creation of the atomic bomb, American engineers repeatedly accomplished what experts had declared impossible. The Hellcat stands as one example among many of how innovation and determination overcame seemingly insurmountable technical challenges. For the tankers and infantry who faced German Panthers and Tigers across the European battlefield, the Hellcat's contribution cannot be measured solely in technical specifications or kill ratios. Its ability to destroy German heavy tanks at unprecedented ranges created a psychological advantage that extended far beyond individual engagements. American forces advanced with the knowledge that they possessed a weapon capable of defeating any German armor they encountered, a confidence that influenced tactical decisions at every level from platoon to army group. The 90mm gun that one stubborn engineer had insisted could work on a mobile platform, despite every expert's objection, had helped change the course of the ground war in Europe. In doing so, it demonstrated a timeless truth about warfare and innovation. Sometimes the most important breakthroughs come not from following established doctrine, but from questioning it, from pursuing ideas that conventional wisdom deems impossible until they become reality. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.